D&D is great, but sometimes it feels like people forget that it isn't the only game out there. There are thousands of RPGs in the market, and a bunch of very, very good ones have slipped like sand through the hands of popularity and fallen right into obscurity. So, what does obscure mean? That's sort of up to interpretation. For some people it's anything that isn't 5e, and for others anything that's been any nominated is too mainstream. But for the purposes of this list, it's any game with less than 10,000 search queries on Google in 2021, which means no D&D, Shadowrun, Starfinder, Pathfinder, Call of Cthulhu, Star Wars RPG, Blades in the Dark, Vampire the Masquerade, Stars Without Numbers, Apocalypse World, Cyberpunk Red, The Dark Eye, or Warhammer 40k. Also, in the interest of my own personal definition of obscure, no Deadlands, Delta Green, or Mutants and Masterminds, as almost everyone seems to have at least heard of those. No Tales from the Loop, because it has its own TV show. No Powered by the Apocalypse games, no World of Darkness or New World of Darkness games, apologies to Hunter the Vigil. And no generic systems. Also, no games based on existing IPs, because we already made a list about that. Also, it's just after the holiday season, and as a gift to myself, this is mostly just an excuse to talk about games I like. And if you want to give me another holiday gift, subscribe. Remember to ring the like button and smash that bell too. Thank you, as always, to our patrons Remy Sweet and Of Winter. Do check us out on Patreon. Honorable mention, My Centipede Boyfriend. This is a very simple and very, very funny game, but it's hard to put on our main list out of the sheer hilarity of it. That hilarity, though, does help it find a place in our honorable mentions. The premise of this game is that players take turns, blindfolded, describing their experience dating a giant, evil, 10,000-year-old alien centipede while other players make sound effects. The game is GMless and should not be played remotely straight, leaning right into the ridiculousness of that premise. Not necessarily a good long-form game, but definitely a very fun party game to blow off some steam. Number 10. This is not a place of honor. Named after a proposed warning to mark radiation sites for humanity's successors, This Is Not a Place of Honor is a one-page, rules-light RPG that focuses mostly on roleplay. Diceless and run with only a deck of cards, players take on the role of two characters. One, a god with immense mystical power who has gone down in legend like the Greek pantheon, and the other, a suspiciously similar member of a spacefaring crew in the very distant past. Players will, in third person, describe the mystical legends of these gods being told and dreamed of in the present, only to cut to the reality of the situation as their crew member, using cards to determine how successful the crew member actually was. In the end, the Ark of the Gods, or rather the wrecked ship of this ancient space crew, is found in the modern day by people seeking out the gods, only to find that this is indeed not a place of honor. There will always be a ceiling on exactly how popular one-page RPG can get, and the premise does limit the replay value a bit. It is absolutely an underrated gem worth looking into if you have any tolerance for symbolism. Number 9, Dogs in the Vineyard. A slightly controversial entry in that the game is no longer available because of the author's dissatisfaction with the setting and the implications of it. For the right group, Dogs is absolutely worth getting your hands on if you can find it. That author, by the way, is D. Vincent Baker, who also made, among other things, Apocalypse World. The game is set in a slightly alternate history old American West, where players take on the role of God's watchdogs, traveling members of the Mormon Church. These dogs go from town to town doing everything from delivering mail to delivering divine justice on authority of God. And yes, I'm starting to see why the author disliked the implications of this setting. Played straight, as if the dogs are morally right, and the church is morally right, and the non-believers are the bad guys, this could go really uncomfortable. This could go to some really deeply uncomfortable places really, really quickly. The ways to play this game in a less problematic style are twofold. Either camp it up to the degree of parody, or make it darker and make it clear, whether the characters ever realize it or not, that the church is not as much of an unquestioned moral authority as it claims to be. If you can find a secondhand copy, it's absolutely worth your time. It's also worth noting that there is a licensed generic system based on the game's rule set. Number 8. Alma Mater. Alma Mater is a game all about high school and the drama that lies therein. The players take on roles of normal high school students in, well, the 80s, because that's when the game was published, making it one of the older games we've covered. Alma Mater isn't largely considered that great revolutionary compared to the more refined and fleshed-out RPGs of today, which has largely caused the game to fall by the wayside. However, the one thing this game does do that almost no modern game does is actually play a high school system. You would not believe what lengths modern games will go through in order to avoid running a standard high school setting with no magic, fantasy, or powers. And not to go off on a tangent, but that is the best thing Alma Mater does. It has classes based on high school stereotypes, a social roleplay system, and a system for handling grades. And yeah, it's simple, it's reductive, but it's a game made in 1982. For its era, it's amazing, and the lack of high school-centric RPGs today has made it more than worth picking up a copy. It will certainly be more fun than actual high school. Number 7, City of Mist. City of Mist is one part urban fantasy, one part superhero game. You play as a Rift, a normal human who has been imbued with supernatural powers from or based on legendary figures. That can be as generic as a fire elemental or as specific as Robin Hood, Superman, or George Washington. The neat twist in the genre is the fact that Mist hides the powers from those who aren't also Rifts, hiding fights between Rifts from wandering eyes. This game is also inherently investigation-based. As a new Rift, or group of new Rifts, you and your group decide to get to the bottom of things and see exactly where the truth and politics of the situation lie. Number 6. Witchcraft. Witchcraft, or C.J. Carella's Witchcraft, is a horror RPG system published in 1999, and it is very, very 90s. The first ever game published in the Unis system, the players take on the role of gifted humans with arcane powers, whether they know it at the start or not. Also inherent to the settings are lesser gifted, mundane, and even vampires, ghosts, and hyper-intelligent cats. The game can get heavily into politics of various covens, and there's a backdrop of some sort of impending doom in a supernatural apocalypse. Not inherently combat light in so much as combat is very, very deadly, and most of the crunch of the game comes from the extremely detailed magic system. Obviously World of Darkness games exist, but this is a more concise and honestly nice change of pace. It's not better than a game like Mage, but it's different. Number 5, Kids on Bikes. So, you guys like Stranger Things? I kid, but this is the easiest way to sum up what Kids on Bikes is. A collaborative storytelling game where you play as children and preteens dealing with supernatural terror, which is a strong genre. The characters will lack both the physical and mental resources that adults have, and likely won't be believed by the adults in their lives, having to rely on themselves and each other. Vibes in this game can run from Stranger Things to E.T. to even something like Animorphs, and it's a fun game for either a group of actual kids or older people to get in touch with their inner child. Number 4, Annalise. Annalise is a very depressing game that is in many ways about trauma. Now, I know how enticing that already sounds, but wait, there's more. The game is no prep and GM-less, easy to pick up and play provided you're mentally prepared. All the players take on characters who are in some way connected to a vampire or similar evil creature, be they their friend, their enemy, or their lover. The game is a metaphor for trauma and in a lot of ways abusive relationships. The vampire is inherently bad, and player characters are drawn together by both the hurt they suffered and the healing they seek. And at $11, it is a lot cheaper than therapy. Number 3, Girl by Moonlight. Full disclaimer, the top 3 on this list are all games that would be my personal top 10 RPGs. Girl by Moonlight is a system hack of Blades in the Dark that, in what I know is a nuclear hot take, is better than Blades in the Dark. The premise is simple. It's a take on the magical girl genre, in where a squad of girls, or boys, get magical powers and fight evil monsters, which is a nice subversion and niche that hasn't really been filled in the community yet. It has 3 settings baked into it: your standard bright and positive heroes fighting generic evil where good triumphs in the end, inspired by sources like Sailor Moon, a bright and more whimsical game where heroes are magical girl idols, inspired by sources like Full Moon, or a dark, gritty, death-filled variant where the players are the only light in a world of darkness, inspired by sources like Madoka Magica or Sailor Nothing. And I saved that one for last because if you're anything like us, you automatically pick that option every single time. It takes what Blades does well and expands on it. There are plenty of roleplay opportunities, almost baked in time for roleplay, but there's also legitimate strategy because the cool twist of the game is that you can only take so many actions while you're transcended. If you use them all, you're a normal teenage girl in the middle of a superpowered fight. And also I'm glad I got to talk about Sailor Nothing in a video. Great series, never read it. Number 2, 10 Candles. We actually reviewed this one in our RPG review this week. Go watch it. Go watch all our videos. 10 Candles is a tragic horror game where the premise is very simple. By the end of this game, all of the characters will die. It's a simple system relying heavily on roleplay and improv, making the horror the main draw of the game. It's a one-shot system and held to time, of course, by 10 candles, with each failed roll blowing out a candle and ending the scene. When all the candles go out, any player who is still alive makes their final stand, being killed by the threats that haunt them, or if you feel like bucking the main roll, a fate worse than death. The game has a built-in setting, one where the world went dark 10 days ago and they came 5 days ago. They being left intentionally vague to be defined over the course of play. The game does, however, encourage making your own setting, providing the players do still die. Some suggestions being a slasher movie, a Silent Hill-style cursed place, or even just a bad part of town that nobody made it out of. By the way, I recommend tea candles because scented candles can lead to an entirely different type of unpleasant experience. Number 1, Burning Wheel. If you've been on our channel at all in the last few months, you had to know this would be here. It is quite literally my favorite game. A lot of these games, as a result of being more niche, have been easy peasy lemon squeezy as far as rules go. Burning Wheel, on the other hand, is difficult, lemon difficult. A very crunchy and very big book, it is also somehow managing to innovate in a very bloated genre. Set in a medieval fantasy world, players build their characters not with classes, but with life paths. You make your character from birth to the start of the game, collecting skill points, traits, and connections as you do. Richer characters tend to be more skilled and better at a wider variety of things, but poorer characters tend to have more traits that reroll their die. As far as rules go, it has almost everything you could want. An almost totally unique combat system, an almost totally unique social debate system, a way to almost ensure novices cannot pay masters at their own skill, but also a way to learn skills, a magic system, and honestly better magic system in the expansion books, humans, elves, dwarves, orcs, even ratfolk, and hyper-intelligent direwolves. I love Burning Wheel, and I understand the barrier to entry, oh boy do I, this book is massive, but it is more than worth the read. And that's our list. Did we miss your favorite obscure RPG? Of course we did. Let us know in the comments. Thank you for watching this video from College of Lore. Remember to like this video, subscribe to join the party, and have a fantastic adventure.